Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Glenn Calloway coming to you from the basement. Today is October 4th, um, a special day, sad day in music history. It is the anniversary of the death of Janis Joplin. Um, this video is actually about both Janis and Jimmy. They died I think, 12, 16 days apart in 1970. Jimmy on September 18th, Janis on October 4th. Um, their names are just synonymous, Jimmy and Janis, the king and the queen of rock in that era. And dying so close together, I vividly remember. It's funny, when Jimmy died, you think nowadays what kind of press that would have gotten. You'd be watching it on CNN for a week. In those days, Jimmy died, and I swear the next day in the Toronto Star, which was the big Toronto newspaper of the day, it had a column about this long and about this wide saying rock star Jimi Hendrix dies from whatever. It was like 20 words. And Rolling Stone ended up doing a big thing, but I think no newspapers and stuff that I didn't cover. They didn't cover it, like, at least in my recollection. Maybe you guys can let me know if it was different where you were. Um, Janis was more of a shock because it happened so quickly after the shock of Jimmy. I mean, the newspapers might not have cared too much about it, but us fans were devastated when Jimmy died. And then 3 weeks later, to wake up, I still remember it was a school morning, waking up and hearing Janis had died. And I remember going to school that morning. I heard about it like 8 in the morning or something. And I walk into school to my buddies and go, Janis Joplin just died. And they're going, get out of here. I go, yeah. Like, it was shocking. So close together. And they were just so synonymous. And I just want to talk a little bit about the similarities and show the records and that. So anyway, I mean, we both know they're members of the 27 Club. They're both 27 years old when they tragically passed. Jimmy was born November 27th, 1942, and Janis was born January 19th, 43. So Jimmy had, a couple of months on her in terms of age, 53 days older, as a matter of fact. Like I said, Jimmy died on the 18th of September, Janis on October 4th. I mean, so close together. And Janis was devastated by Jimmy's death. There's a song on the Pearl album, which is Janis's last album, called Half Moon, which is kind of a tribute to Jimmy. The guitar playing is supposed to be based on how Jimmy would play a riff, and it was to Janis. It was her tribute, and like I said, they were the king and the queen. Both came to international prominence at the Monterey Pop Festival. The two most outstanding performances of the weekend were Jimmy, and which is, an iconic performance with him with the, fire and the whole bit. And Janis's performance of Ball and Chain is just one of the great vocal performances of all time, in my opinion. I guess for a personal thing for me, I think Jimi Hendrix is arguably the greatest guitar player that ever lived. Janis is my favorite female vocalist. So there's another one. They both played at Woodstock. They both released 4 albums, official albums. Obviously, the posthumous catalog of Jimi Hendrix is massive. And you could argue that Pearl came out after Janis died, but Janis had recorded all but vocals on all but one of the songs, and the mixes were all approved by her, and it was ready to go. So in all intents and purposes, I consider it a Janis, not a posthumous release album, but a posthumous release, obviously. The only song, she was supposed to do the vocals for a song called Buried Alive in the Blues, before, and then passed away, and they released the album with that as an instrumental. So let's just kind of talk about the music. Um, I have this box set, Janis. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's the four albums with Big Brother and the two solo records. Um, Excellent classic LP collection, Janis Joplin. Here's the now. So Jimmy released his first album on May 12th, 1967, which is, of course, Are You Experienced? I don't have an original pressing of this. These are the reissues, which are outstanding. Sound quality, labels, everything. They're beautiful recordings. U.S. pressings were a little different than the British pressings. The British release had Red House on it. The American one didn't, or the North American one. So I was not used to having Red House on my, which is one of my favorite Hendrix songs. Great blues song. That's the other thing. If you want to talk about something, the similarities with Janis and Jimmy is they both had a passion for blues, and also so they didn't. Let's talk for a second. They didn't meet up at Monterey, from what I understand. The first meeting of Janis and Jimmy was during a jam session in New York City in early 1968, and they became friends, and they were friendly throughout their rest of their time here with us. But Are You Experienced, released May 12th, 1967. Janis's first album with Big Brother and the Holding Company was released on August 23rd, 67, 3 months later. This was such an incredible time for music. I'm so glad I grew up in this era. I guess the biggest hit on this album, or the most familiar song on this album, is Down on Me. If you're familiar with the Big Brother canon, but that's the first album from Big Brother and the Holding Company. The second album for Jimmy, Axe as Bold as Love. Incredible record. Again, this is the reissue of the album. Great record. Man, trying to get the cover out. It's a tight one. Gatefold. Boy, when I was doing my favorite album covers, how did I miss this? This has Up From the Skies, Spanish Castle Magic, great song. Wait Till Tomorrow, If 6 Was 9, Little Wing, one of my favorite Hendrix songs. Castles Made of Sand, and Axe as Bold as Love, of course, the song Bold as Love. Fantastic record. Jimmy's second album, released December 1st, 67, like 7 months after the first one. They followed up pretty quickly. Janis's second album with Big Brother was the one that really put them on the map. I mean, Piece of My Heart was a huge hit. This album is incredible. One of my favorite albums of all time. Cheap Thrills. Iconic cover. Another one could have made my favorite covers video. What does that say, 60s? Does that scream 60s, San Francisco? Of course, Piece of My Heart's on here. Ball and Chain. Ball and Chain on here is actually the only song that actually is a really live recording. The other ones were made to sound like they were a live recording, but fantastic album. I'm going to sneeze. I know it. Okay, Jimmy didn't release another album until October 1968, which I guess is just another, 8, 9 months, 10 months later. This masterpiece, Electric Ladyland. I am going to say that this is my favorite Jimi Hendrix album. Incredible record. Of course, there's the European cover with the topless women on it. But what a record this is. Great guest stars, Jack Cassidy and Buddy Miles, Steve Winwood, Al Cooper. Amazing, amazing record. Janis leaves Big Brother. That was big news. Went out on her own and recorded, got them Old Cosmic Blues Again Mama, which was released in September 69. Great album with Try on it. Maybe. And I think what's Janis's best vocal performance ever is Little Girl Blue on side 2. If you don't think Janis can sing and she was just screaming and yelling and screechy or whatever, listen to Little Girl Blue. I mean, she had an amazing voice. Such an emotional song. Okay, then we come up with 1970, the sad year. I was fortunate enough to see both Jimmy and Janis live. I saw Jimmy in 1969 at Maple Leaf Gardens. Amazing show. Who remembers stuff from 1969? I wish I had the set list written down, but I know they did Voodoo Child. I know that he did the typical Hendrix stuff, and that was actually the performance where earlier that day he got busted for the heroin. So then he came back and played that night. Janis, I saw in 1970 at Festival Express. Just an electric performance. She was so good. I'll never forget it. Amazing. And who would notice a couple of months later she'd be gone. So Jimmy released one more album officially before he died, and that was with the Band of Gypsies. This came out in March 25th, 1970, and Jimmy, of course, left us in September. I love this album. Great live. There's a box set you can buy that has the complete performances. This is on colored vinyl. Just a fantastic live album from Jimmy. And then Janis is in LA recording Pearl, and she has 9 of the songs recorded and mixed, vocals ready to go under the production of Paul Rothchild, and she dies of a heroin overdose. The next day she was supposed to go in and do the vocals for Buried Alive in the Blues. They decided to release it instrumentally, and which I think was fitting, but Full Tilt Boogie Band, Pearl, Janis Joplin. 52 years ago today, Janis is gone.